Thank you all for taking the time to join us this evening. We're so excited to have you here today with us. This meeting will be recorded. We're going to have you all on mute for now, but near the end, we're going to have a Q&A session. So as we go through the presentation, as you have questions, feel free to use the question and answer section on your tool box, and or also just put it in the comments and we'll keep track of them. Try to limit your questions or your contributions to a minute or less once we give you the chance to speak, and keep them respectful, open-minded, and constructive. So I'm going to start with an introduction for myself. So my name is Miriam Foote, and I'm the new advocacy manager at the National Peace Corps Association. It's a pleasure to meet and welcome so many members of our advocacy community as we prepare for this year's Hill Day and so many of the amazing actions that we have planned for this year. So before we begin, I'd like to introduce and invite our Vice President, Joe Schaffner, to introduce himself. Joe, would you like to give a few words?
Sure, welcome. Very excited to see all of you this evening. Um, Vice President, as Miriam said, started in January. About 2 years prior to that, I was on the board of NPCA, and like many of you, also an RPCV. So thrilled to be here. Also thrilled to welcome One Campaign to tonight's call. There was one brief update that we wanted to give because it was very top of mind for those in the community. Was the House Bill 8595, which we've been communicating with most everyone about that bill and the amendment attached to it from Pennsylvania Representative Perry. Wanted to let you know, well, first of all, for those of you who don't know, that amendment within that bill, the idea was for it to zero out Peace Corps funding. Now, many of those that we've talked to within the House and committees do not feel that will make it beyond the initial vote on these amendments. But we'll have to keep an eye on that as we go forward. At this point, the House has gone in recess, and we expect them a little bit later this month to come back out. And we'll keep an eye on it and keep you all informed, but did want to let you know that at least for the moment, it's paused, and we'll be sure to track that. So know that that's top of mind for us. Thank you all, and I'll hand it back over to Mariam.
Great, thank you, Joe. So let me begin. So at the National Peace Corps Association, our goal is to support, equip, and empower Peace Corps volunteers, return volunteers, and advocates with the tools and confidence they need to effectively engage with Congress. Whether this is your first Hill Day or if you've participated many times before, we want you to feel prepared to share your story and advocate for the Peace Corps with confidence. We're excited to partner with the One Campaign for tonight's webinar. Storytelling is one of the most powerful tools we have as advocates, and learning how to connect our personal experiences to policy is what helps makes our meetings on Capitol Hill impactful. Before we jump into today's presentation, so now it's my pleasure actually to introduce Misty Uribe. So Misty is the regional organizing manager at the One Campaign, where she has spent the past 5 years building and empowering leaders to advocate for policies that expand economic opportunity, strengthen global partnerships, and create a more equitable future. She currently supports grassroots and grasstops organizing efforts across 16 states and serves as the national lead for One's Youth Professionals Program, helping to cultivate the next generation of advocates. With more than a decade of organizing experience, Misty has led advocacy initiatives across issue-based campaigns, electoral organizing, and grassroots leadership development. Before joining the One Campaign, she worked on gun violence prevention with Everytown for gun safety and held organizing roles on local and presidential political campaigns. Misty is passionate about helping people find and share their voices, and we are so grateful she's here tonight to help us prepare for Hill Day and for our engagements on Capitol Hill by teaching us how to tell our stories in a way that resonates with policymakers. So please join me in welcoming Misty Uribe. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you so very much. It is wonderful to be here with the Peace Corps. Again, my name is Misty Uribe. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I am the regional organizing manager for the One Campaign. Tonight, we are going to get you ready for Hill Day, and we are going to start that by talking about telling your story, how you're going to advocate for change through storytelling. But first, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the One campaign, and also wanted to let you know that I will be attending the Peace Corps conference in a couple weeks. We will have one will have a table there. So if you hear anything that you like, if you're interested in hearing more about one, talking to me a little bit more, I will be tabling there. So just stop by and talk with me a little bit more. Next slide. So at One, we combine voices with expert policy research and grassroots and grasstop advocacy to make a compelling case for laws and investments that create economic opportunities and healthier lives in Africa. Together, we have influenced world leaders, unlocked billions in investments for Africa, and helped pass bipartisan policies that deliver jobs, electricities, and vital infrastructure. When our volunteers take action, they aren't just speaking up, they are creating a better and fairer world. Our work at One is not just about charity, it's not about charity, it is about justice. We speak out against the root causes of injustice. We know what needs to happen to create a fairer world. And we bring people together, a community of people to amplify our voices to ensure they are heard by those in power. And then finally, we demand change from people who can make it happen, and we also hold them accountable. So the next slide is a little video that explains a little more background about who we are at One and what we do.
One is fighting for a more just and equal world. We are rebels with a cause, policy analyzers, expert mobilizers, and passionate persuaders. We unite people around the world.
For the One campaign, thank you for bringing us together.
Reaching across continents from Lagos
Stop talking, start acting.
to LA.
When women are not empowered, it creates poverty around the world.
And across the aisle.
Thank you for your activism.
We band together around a common mission.
Together, I really do believe that we can make poverty history.
Putting politics aside, we combine data.
Making it accessible to people is a key step in understanding these issues.
Grassroots activism, political engagement, and creative partnerships.
And action. I'm so grateful for what One has done.
Please join us by signing up to one.org today.
To make our voices heard and hold governments accountable.
The One campaign is an amazing organization that's really about advocacy, and they really garner and encourage activism, and it's about justice. They're not like a charity organization.
And we're making progress. Extreme poverty has been cut in half, but we won't stop until we finish the job and achieve our vision for a more just world. A world where Africa is an equal player and people across Africa have access to abundant economic opportunities and lead thriving, healthy lives.
We must take a stand on this, and we can learn a lot from Africa.
Achieving this isn't about charity, it's about justice and equality. So we empower all people to use their voices to build this future.
The people's voices are pretty strong.
Because none of us are equal until all of us are equal. When we speak as one, our voices are heard. Join us.
Okay, wonderful. So next we are going to hop in to talk a little bit more about how we are going to formulate your story to speak with your member of Congress. And I think the first thing to know is that your story matters, especially to your member of Congress. Stories make policy real. Members vote on legislation and budget, but stories are how those decisions affect real people. Stories are memorable. While statistics and fact sheets and talking points are so very important, what they remember most is a compelling personal story that their constituent shares that connects policy to real life. Stories build credibility. Your stories build credibility for why issues matter to your member of Congress's constituents. Stories also help your member of Congress communicate. Your story will be needed to speak to the House or the Senate floor by the member of Congress, and they can relay that story that you share with them. They will use these stories while talking with leadership or other colleagues, and your story becomes an example they can carry with them. Stories create emotional connection. A good story can help your member of Congress feel concern, hope, urgency, and most importantly, responsibility. Your story will tell the member of Congress why they should care. So your story will bridge all the gaps as to why the member of Congress should care about the policy issue that you're talking about. Your story isn't just the point of the meeting, but your story does bridge between the issue and the action you're asking Congress to take. As we know, members of Congress hear statistics all day long, but what they don't hear every day is why someone like you cares enough to go to Washington, D.C., travel to the Hill, and show up at their office to have a meeting with them. And also to catch the attention of the member of Congress, make sure that your story humanizes the issue that you're talking about, demonstrates why you care, builds credibility, and leads naturally to the policy request. Next slide. So there are a couple things in your story that you might want to avoid. Too much background. Sometimes we can add a little too much detail to things that doesn't really matter about the issue. A good rule is to ask yourself, does this detail help my member of Congress better understand the issue? If the answer is no, you can cut the detail out. It could be something as simple as some people might like to say, I traveled 15 hours on an airplane to get where I needed to be. That might not be important to the member of Congress, so it would be a good thing to cut out. Also, telling multiple stories. Make sure you tell one story. People like to combine multiple stories like their childhood experience, volunteer experience, advocacy, but pick the strongest one that is going to resonate most to the member of Congress. Also, another thing to avoid is having no connection to the ask. You are there to ask something of your member of Congress, and don't forget to do that. Always end with the ask. You can say, that is why I'm asking for your support, or that is why it is important to get your support. A strong story is personal, it's brief. With a member of Congress, you really want to keep your story about 60 to 90 seconds. It is focused on one experience, it's relevant to the audience, and it's connected to a specific ask. A couple more things to think about when formulating your story is, who are you sharing your story with? Are you having a meeting with your actual member of Congress? Or is it a legislative aide? Or is it staff focused on foreign affairs? It is really good to do research on who you're having your meeting with. A lot of times before the meeting, the member of Congress staff will give you the name of who you are meeting with. Just do a quick LinkedIn search, see where they went to college, see where they live. Just something that can connect you to them, makes it a little bit better while sharing your story, but also takes the nerves down a little bit. What is the one thing you need your audience to know or learn from your story is very important for you to think about when formulating it. How do you want your audience to feel after hearing your story? Do you want them to feel hopeful? Do you want your member of Congress to feel a little responsible that he really should go forth with the ask? And what do you want your audience to do after hearing your story? I've said it a couple times already, really having that ask. What does the member of Congress need to do after you guys leave the office? Next slide, please. So here's a simple story arc framework. We're going to formulate this story for your member of Congress specifically. think about things that they would want to know. So you want to start with before. What did you believe or what did you know? A statistic, a fun fact about the world, or old ways of doing things. Through this slide, I'm going to kind of formulate my 60 to 90-second spiel based on me. So I would say going into the member of Congress office, I am just simply volunteering with the Peace Corps. I'm here because I care. Your story is going to be much more specific to you and much more personal. So for the before, a good example to start off would be, I always knew that the Peace Corps sent volunteers around the world to support education, health, agriculture, and community development. That would be your opening line after you introduce yourself. Then you would move on to the next, which is problem with the old way or before. So, but what I didn't understand was ... And you would do a statistic brought to life, impact of the thing much deeper or different. So a good example of that would be, what I didn't understand was that thousands of communities request Peace Corps volunteers each year, but limited funding restricts how many volunteers can be trained and sent to serve where they are most needed. Peace Corps serves American interests by building relationships that improve our country's reputation and create long-term partnerships that benefit the United States. So you can see how I started with something that I always knew that was relevant and really got a little into a statistic, kind of something that's leading up to the ask. Then you're going to move on to the new realization. So the one day or time I saw things in a new, different way. And this is going to be how your Peace Corps experience transformed your life, really. So you could, in before and problem, that is where you want to make the strong hook. So the before and the problem is where you really want to bring them in, and you're going to hook them to create curiosity. The new realization, an example can be, after learning about the experiences of returned Peace Corps volunteers, I saw how Americans serving overseas helped strengthen communities while also representing the best of our country. Then you can move on to how I changed. So how you changed, why it mattered to you personally. An example of this could be, this changed my perspective because I realized investing in the Peace Corps is not just about helping other countries. It is about also promoting peace, understanding, and global partnerships that benefit everyone. And then continuing on in your story, you're going to want to think about the decision as a response to change. So why did you decide to help? What did you do to decide to help? An example of that could be, so I decided to speak up and advocate for continued and stronger support of the Peace Corps and its mission. And you can kind of see how all of these examples that I'm giving you are slowly building up to what you were going to ask at the end. So the next, you're going to talk about why you chose the Peace Corps. Why was the Peace Corps a vehicle for change for you? And an example of that for me could be, I am meeting with you today because the Peace Corps prepares American leaders and advances United States influence in places where competitors are actively expanding their presence. Again, giving them a little more detail into why I'm in their office. And then why do we need to act? So this is the very important part that you never want to forget to leave out. What does your member of Congress need to do? And this is where your story would end. So an example of that for me would be, we are here to ask for your support for increased funding for the Peace Corps. Your support is a cost-effective investment that serves American interests by strengthening Americans' leadership abroad and expanding service opportunities. It also strengthens our global partnerships and helps to ensure that American values and leadership remain influential around the world. So putting all of that together, you have a really great, impactful story that tells the member of Congress everything that they need to hear. It gives statistics. It gives a problem before, how that problem is being potentially solved. It is throwing a little bit of humanity in there by relaying your story that is special to you with the Peace Corps. And then you're ending with an ask, why are you there? So a couple more things to remember about sharing your story or meeting with your member of Congress and sharing your story. When in meetings with members of Congress or staff, depending on your role in the meeting, you may not always be sharing your story, and that is okay because your part in the meeting is equally as important. So a little bit later, we'll do a little skit kind of showing you how to meet with your member of Congress. And you will see that not everybody will be sharing your story. Some people might be the person that introduces. So they call on people to go around and just say where they're from, when they served, where they live. You will have somebody that gives a couple statistics. And then you will have somebody sharing your story and then somebody doing the ask. While also sharing your story with a member of Congress, it may not always have an ask with it. So the example that I gave you had an ask. So you may be keeping that opening for the next person in their group to share their part. So just like I said, you might just be sharing your story. So you might not be ending with an ask, and that is okay because the next person is going to follow up with that ask. When sharing your story with a member of Congress, as we talked about before, make sure you keep it 60 to 90 seconds. That is why it is important to really think about how you formulate your why before Hill Day. As I said before, research your member of Congress or your staff member that you're meeting with. If you went to the same college or go to the same church, mention that in your introduction. I think that a lot of staff members in Washington, D.C. Don't get to connect with their hometown or their home state a lot. They don't get to go home a lot. So they like having members or having constituents come in and say, oh, I've seen you went to the University of Alabama, so did I. They like to have that connection. And finally, and most importantly, remember that you are not there to be a policy expert. You do not have to be a policy expert, and you're not expected to know all the statistics. You are there to share why the Peace Corps is important to you and help the member of Congress understand why they should support your ask. Members of Congress are experts in policy making. You are the expert in your Peace Corps experience, and your perspective is unique and valuable. Okay. Thank you so much. Hopefully you learned a little bit from this. Again, I will be at the Peace Corps Conference in a couple weeks, setting up a table for one. I would love to see all of you there. I would love to meet all of you. And if you are interested in hearing more about one, stop on by. And now I actually have the honor of introducing my colleague, Rodney. Rodney is at the One Campaign. He is our Director of U.S. Government Relations. Rodney used to be, most recently, Rodney was the Deputy Director of Government Relations at U.S. Global Leadership Coalition, where he led advocacy initiatives to strengthen Americans' global leadership and reinforce bipartisan support for smart and strategic investments in U.S. diplomacy and international assistance programs. He has also worked on the Hill. Rodney served as an aide to Senate Democrat leader Chuck Schumer, where he was responsible for advancing the leader's legislative agenda, including bolstering global development and economic assistance programs. He also served as a foreign affairs legislative assistant to Representative Colin Allred in Texas, leading his work to the House Foreign Affairs Committee, spearheading efforts to protect human rights and improve lives around the world. It is an honor to work with Rodney at One, and you are going to hear some really important things from him.
Thanks, Misty. And thanks, Miriam and Joe and the whole team for having me join you as you prepare for what is going to be a really important conference and Hill Day. As someone who used to work on the Hill, as Misty mentioned, and now, working in the government relations space, I really like get excited for Hill Days because I think they really make a massive impact. And it's an opportunity, as Misty said, for you all to put a face to some of the funding numbers and sort of dry data that members of Congress and their staff are looking at. And I think this really provides you an opportunity to personalize it. So I just want to thank you all for taking the time for volunteering. I know that it's not always easy, and doing the travel isn't always convenient. So it's a huge lift for you all to be able to do to fight for the Peace Corps, which does such important work around the world. So yeah, let me dive in. Just a quick overview. Sort of picking up from Misty's telling your story, I'm going to kind of start us off with just setting the stage. Where are we at now in Congress? Where will you all be finding the Hill when you go on your advocacy day, July 20th, I believe you all will be there. What can you expect? I'll reiterate some of the things, some of the important messages that Misty just touched on. And then again, we'll want to kind of flesh out some of the important messages you all really want to hit on while you're in those meetings. And then I'll close with doing some sort of nuts and bolts logistics, getting you all on the Hill, making sure that you're getting to your meeting on time. So, you know, uh, uh, again, I understand that we kind of have a good mix of folks here, with some folks who have done Hill days and you've been on the Hill many times, so you're pros, and then we have folks who maybe this is your first time. So I really just want to make sure we're all on the same page, and apologies for those who have done this before if any of this sounds repetitive. But again, I just want to make sure everyone is singing from the same songbook. So just to dive in, looking at sort of the budget state of play. So as we are today, um, as I think Joe had mentioned earlier, the House left. Um, there hasn't really been a whole lot of progress on the fiscal year 2027 appropriations bills. Um, Currently, the House has passed 2 of its 12 appropriations bills, and the Senate hasn't passed any at all. In fact, actually, the Senate is still struggling. The Appropriations Committee in the Senate is still struggling to figure out sort of what their top line number is going to be, so then they can start actually writing the individual bills. So we're not we're a little bit behind the ball, as sort of has become typical with Congress, when it comes to appropriations. As you all might already know, government funding is going to expire September 30th. So there's not really a lot of time left. When you look at the congressional calendar and how many days that both houses are in session, there really isn't that many, particularly given that they were going to be out for the better part of August, and then they'll come back in September and have about really 4 weeks to have to come up with something and agree to something before government runs out of funding, as I said, on that September 30th deadline. So the sort of conventional wisdom in DC right now is that more than likely Congress might have to pass a continuing resolution. That's a short-term, basically funding patch to give themselves a little bit of extra time to figure it out, and then sort of pass the full year funding bills at some point after that short-term patch expires. So um, looking at sort of late mid-July, when you all will be in DC and going to Capitol Hill, as I mentioned, the House has actually, for the most part, already written their bill. I think Joe alluded to this. The bill is largely final. They were teed up to actually consider the bill on the House floor last week. They had some problems. The speaker had some problems within his own party, had to postpone to this week. They weren't able to sort of navigate those issues, and ultimately the speaker decided to go ahead and send the House home, and they are going to try to deal with those issues when they come back from the Independence Day recess. So we're sort of closely following that foreign aid bill. It's 47 billion dollars, which is it's not what we had hoped for. It's a 6% cut from the previous years enacted, but it is better than what the president had put forward in his budget proposal. So as Joe had mentioned again, we're looking at that problematic amendment from Rep. Perry that proposes to eliminate Peace Corps funding, which again, I think depending on when House majority leadership is going to decide when they're going to put that House bill back on the floor, your Hill Day might actually be well timed because that will be just when the House is coming back. And so you really have an opportunity to be talking to members just as they might be considering the foreign aid funding bill, and just as that Perry Amendment might be coming up. So it's going to be an important dynamic to watch as we hear more on the schedule when the House returns. Again, moving to the Senate side, as I mentioned, not yet to publish their bill. We have heard rumors that something might be coming out in July, but again, no certainty there. So again, if you all are meeting with Senate offices, again, well timed, because that will give you an opportunity to really weigh in with members and their staff just as they're still crafting their bill, particularly when we've seen in previous years the Senate does tend to write a better bill than what we've seen come out of the House in more recent years. So again, that just provides you another really well-timed opportunity to sort of be meeting with members and their staff at the right time. So getting into those meetings, what can you expect? You all will more than likely be meeting with staff. Now there might be a few member meetings, which are great, and that's a huge opportunity to talk directly to the member. But speaking as a former staffer, and I'm a little bit biased here, I'll admit, but I actually think the meetings with staff tend to be more productive than what you can find sometimes when you're meeting with a member who often is having their attention pulled in different directions. They might not be able to spend as much time with you if they have to go vote. So I actually, feel that getting those staff meetings can be really, really productive and gives you an opportunity to really get a sense of where the member is and what they're thinking. So, expect for those meetings. I think staffers will usually schedule them for about 30 minutes, and I'm sure Miriam and team will give you all a detailed schedule, but typically those are scheduled for about 30 minutes. I would plan for about 15 to 20, just because you never know what staff are, what their day looks like. They're taking a number of meetings. So it really is important that you are succinct. And, as Misty alluded to, you want to use your time wisely and make sure that while you all have, a vast and great wealth of experience, really, really stick to those one or 2 points that are going to resonate with that office and with that staffer. It's always better to sort of give them a little taste and then leave a little bit, and I'll get into this later, but like leave a little bit of time for them to respond and actually sort of have that natural conversation where they're able to sort of, pick at the thread of whatever sort of item interests them. The one thing, having done a number of these meetings over the years, that I think typically works best, and I think what might be sort of a good format to follow, is sort of designate one person as the group lead. And this can change from meeting to meeting, but I think it does help to sort of have that one person who does the sort of general introduction at the top, reason for the meeting. And I would also just flag, as you all are doing that initial sort of greeting and introduction, if this applies, remember to thank the member for their support. If that member has been supportive for Peace Corps, historically, A lot of times, staff and members, they hear the criticism, but sometimes they don't hear the gratitude. So I think it is important to not only thank them for their time that they spent meeting with you all, but also if they have been a member who has been supportive of resourcing the Peace Corps and Peace Corps funding, that you thank them for their support, because I think that also lets them know that they have folks in their corner, who notice when they are doing the right thing. Um, I would also just recommend go ahead and make your ask right at the top, so that this is something that they're getting right at the front end. They don't have to sort of wonder about what the ask is going to be throughout the meeting. Just go ahead and right after the sort of that introduction, go ahead and get into the ask. I typically then what I will do, instead of having folks do sort of individual introductions at the beginning, I always feel it's sort of a better use of time to have folks sort of once the introduction is done, once the ask has been presented, and then you sort of that group lead passes it to the group members depending on time, to kind of to reinforce with their story, and once you get that opportunity to sort of talk about your story, you can do a quick intro there and then get into your 1 to 2 sort of points that reinforce the ask. And as I said, make sure that this is not just a one-way conversation. You really want to allow the staffer or whoever you're meeting with, the member, to give you feedback. I think I always find it when it's helpful to even just take a moment and say, hey, like, what are you working on? How can we be a resource? What of the things that we have shared has really sort of resonated with you, and really get a moment to sort of hear from them, because that's the opportunity where you all can collect intel, and that can help sort of the continued engagement and advocacy with that office. Um, and then I think what I would recommend is just as you're closing out, again, reiterate that ask. I would even go so far as, once you've sort of made that core ask, I always think it's helpful to sort of then pin to a concrete action. So I mentioned that you all might be on the Hill when the House is potentially going to be considering the foreign aid bill. Maybe that's an opportunity for you to say, hey, you all are going to be considering the foreign aid bill. Uh, would love your boss's support, or would love for your boss to oppose the Perry Amendment. Is that something that we can rely on your support for? And then that gives you an opportunity to follow up. Or you can phrase it a different way. If you think this might be someone who is skeptical, you can say, would love to get your thoughts on Brett Perry's amendment. How are you thinking through it? Are there any questions we can help answer? And so that way, that sort of reinforces, your ability to be a resource to them, and also just provides an additional follow-up item after the meeting, because again, you want to sort of establish that rapport and that engagement that you can then sort of take through a long period of time. And then just, in terms of messages, Misty really covered this in great detail, so I won't spend too much time in this section. But again, really, make sure that you are conveying the Peace Corps' value proposition, particularly at this time where, we've seen so much emphasis on how does this program sort of advance U.S. peace, prosperity, security. I think understanding the people-to-people connections that the Peace Corps enables, I think that's such an important element to really underscore for staffers. I mean, I view the Peace Corps as, you all are diplomats for America around the world, and that can be emphasized enough. And I think connecting that to why the really moderate amount of investment that Congress makes in the Peace Corps goes so far. I think that argument will really have mileage with folks on the Hill. So that's that on messaging. Let me now get into sort of logistics, and making sure that you all are getting to your meetings on time, because that's supremely important. Again, staff, these Hill member offices have limited amount of time. So you don't want to be, as I can admit to you, this happened to me one time, stuck in the in the security line trying to get into the building and not at the meeting. So maybe let me just actually start there, because for the folks who haven't been to Capitol Hill before, in order to make it into the congressional office buildings, you do need to go through sort of airport style security. So just, want to give you a heads up, leave all your weapons and sort of fun, dangerous gadgets at home, because that they will stop you if you try to go through security with that. So you want to give yourself plenty of time to navigate through security, to make sure that you can get to the actual office once you've made it through the security checkpoint. Um, uh, I tend to try to not to wear a lot of metal. Even sort of like your belt will go off. Sometimes shoes will go off. So just be cognizant of that as you're thinking through sort of um, wardrobe for the day. And the other thing actually I would mention, speaking of wardrobe, is wear some comfy shoes. It's a lot of walking, particularly if you're going between the House and the Senate. Those things I think on Google look a lot closer than they actually are. And even walking around in the congressional office building themselves, it's a complex. It's multiple buildings with marble flooring that is treacherous on the feet. So do yourself a favor. Don't be like me, who made the mistake many years ago of wearing my like brand new loafers that left me with all kinds of bruises at the end of the day. So I would definitely recommend your your comfy walking shoes. Other thing, in terms of making sure you're not stuck in the rain, check the weather. If you want to grab an umbrella, to make sure that if you're crossing between buildings, you're covered. Bring that. Once you've gotten into just a little bit on sort of the layout, each House and Senate each have three office buildings basically. Once you've gotten into, let's say you get into Rayburn, which is on the House side, you can then access the other two um, congressional buildings without having to go through security. But once you leave one chamber to go to the Senate, let's say, you do then need to go through security again. And then the Senate also has three office buildings that you can access, that are connected. So you need to go through security once, but as long as you're basically staying on each side of the chamber, then you just need to go through security one time. Then the other thing, really quickly, I'll just flag is, again, bring water, and if your schedule is going long, maybe having a snack or granola bar or something of that nature might be helpful just to keep your energy levels up throughout the day. I will also flag for you guys that both the House and the Senate, there are cafeterias on the House side, it's in Longworth, the Longworth office building. On the Senate side, it's in the Dirksen Senate office building. So you can go there. They'll have food for you if you want to grab lunch or a quick bite, or buy a water. Also, if you have, sometimes it happens where maybe your schedule is sort of broken up, where you have a big gap. If you want to just find somewhere where you can sit, and wait for your next meeting, you can go there and you can hang out. So I'll stop there. I'm happy to take any questions, if folks, if I can help clarify anything. But yeah, thank you again for letting me join you this evening.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rodney, for all of that information. Super helpful stuff, especially about the layout. It's going to be a hot day. This is going to be July 20th. So I'm hoping everyone comes prepared to walk, have some snacks, have some water. And I'm also tracking some of the questions that are coming in as well. So we'll answer some of that at the end, but we will be having more resources out, including some of the asks, and some of the language around those asks as well coming your way. So no need to worry, everyone. That is coming. But yeah, please feel free to use the chat box if you have any more questions, and we can bring it up and bring that up to Rodney as well at the end. So now I have the pleasure of moving us along to a really fun part of the presentation that I'm really excited about. It's our role-playing skit to really show you how this could look like in real time. So I'm going to be joined by my colleagues Oren Luke, who's our Senior Digital Content Manager, as well as our interns Olivia Rengen, who's studying political science at Villanova University, and Mariam Gregorian, who's studying business and political economy at NYU, who really helped to put this together and will be our stars for tonight. tonight. As you've just heard, a successful advocacy meeting isn't just about memorizing every policy detail. It's about working together as a team to tell a clear, authentic, and compelling story that connects your experience to the issues that you're advocating for. Now we're going to put those ideas into practice. One of the best ways to build confidence before Hill Day is to see what a congressional meeting actually looks like. And during the conference, we'll give you the opportunity to practice that as well. For many participants, this will be their first meeting with the congressional office, and that is completely normal. In the next segment, we'll walk through a mock congressional meeting, from introductions to sharing your story, making your ask, responding to questions, and closing the meeting. As you watch, pay close attention to how the advocates support one another, keep the conversation focused, and build a genuine relationship with the congressional office. Remember, there isn't one perfect way to conduct a meeting. Every conversation is different. The goal isn't to deliver a flawless script, it's to have an authentic, time-sensitive, respectful conversation that helps policymakers understand why this issue matters to you and your community. With that, let's jump into our show with our stars tonight and see what a successful advocacy meeting looks like. So Mariam and Olivia, I'm going to let you both take it, as well with Oren. So thank you. Yeah, feel free to start. Mariam is going to be our RPCV, and Olivia is our RPCV NPCA intern in this meeting. So yeah, feel free to start.
Okay, so we're about to go into the meeting. I'm really excited to be the group leader of this team. And based on my notes, I know that I'm the constituent for Rep. Jim Costa. But let's think for a minute about what we're supposed to do in the meeting before we go in. First, let's make sure to introduce ourselves and explain why we're here. Next, we should share our journeys of being in the Peace Corps and why the Peace Corps is important. And lastly, we can't forget to explain the asks of the National Peace Corps Association at this time.
Yeah, and I did just a little bit of research beforehand on Representative Costa's support for the Peace Corps. He's actually on the Congressional Peace Corps Caucus, and he's a long history of supporting the Peace Corps. We should remember to thank the congressman for his support and spend time explaining why Peace Corps rather than what the Peace Corps is.
Great, let's go.
Good morning. My name's Oren Luck. I'm the legislative staffer for Representative Costa. How can I help you today?
Good morning, Oren. We're here on the behalf of the National Peace Corps Association. We have a meeting at 12 p.m., but I understand your time is limited, so I just want to make sure that we still have about 15 to 20 minutes to meet with you.
I may need to leave 2 or 3 minutes before my 12:30 meeting, but otherwise we should be all set. Let's go to our meeting room.
Great. Now that we're in the meeting room, just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for your time. My name is Mariam, and I live in Fresno, and I served as an agricultural volunteer in the Peace Corps from 2021 to 2023 in Benin.
And my name is Olivia. I'm originally from Madera, though I currently live in DC. I'm actually interning with the National Peace Corps Association advocacy team.
Oh, cool. Nice to meet you both. I cover the foreign affairs portfolio for Representative Costa. What can I help you with today?
Right, so we're here for NPCA's annual Hill Day to advocate for a well-funded Peace Corps. I'd love to share a bit more about my story, actually, as it's the reason why I'm here advocating today.
That would be great.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I served in the Peace Corps in Benin. I had to learn a new language and a new culture. While I was trained by the Peace Corps in sustainable agriculture, I had to work closely with the community to figure out solutions for soil degradation and long droughts, which had an impact on the country's food supplies. And what I learned more than anything from my experience was the value of community building, hard work, persistence, and a lot of patience.
Sounds like an amazing experience. You know, I actually thought about doing the Peace Corps right after I got my bachelor's degree.
Well, you actually still can join. Besides joining right after college, there's many people who volunteer mid-career or even well into retirement. I'd also like to tell you just a little bit about myself. I'm currently interning with the National Peace Corps Association, and I've had the pleasure of working alongside returned volunteers who served all around the world. Hearing about their experiences has also led me to consider joining the Peace Corps after I graduate.
Great. Looks like we both have a future in joining the Peace Corps. Now, as far as I know, the Peace Corps is not as impacted this year on funding as other organizations. Congress has had to make some tough budgetary decisions, and it sounds like the Peace Corps came out in pretty good shape.
Well, last year's fiscal budget was 410.5 million. Congress cut down about 20 million out of the budget, down from 430.5 million called for in the president's budget. The Peace Corps is aiming to raise the number of volunteers to pre-COVID levels, specifically 8,000 volunteers by the year 2030. To do this, the current budget, which is equivalent to that allocated to the agency about a decade ago, doesn't really meet our needs. Our request is for the fiscal year 27 budget to account for rising costs globally and to ensure both the safety and security of our volunteers and effective programs.
Yeah, and I'd also like to mention the return on investment. The Peace Corps funding makes up less than 0.0001% of fiscal spending. It's a small part of our government's budget, yet there are exponential returns. Peace Corps volunteers return to the US with the skills and knowledge required to start nonprofits and small businesses, take on leadership roles on school boards and civic associations, and strengthen our healthcare system. Peace Corps serves American interests by building relationships that improve our country's reputation and create long-term partnerships that benefit the United States.
So, with that said, what can we do to help you?
Yeah, so we're asking Representative Costa to increase support for the Peace Corps as those who return home continue to support growth in the US for years. We're also asking Costa to vote no against the Perry Amendment to zero out funding for the Peace Corps and to co-sponsor the Congressional Gold Medal House Resolution 5521 to award nearly 250,000 Americans who served in the Peace Corps volunteers since 1961.
I appreciate that information. Do you have any information you can share that I could pass along?
Yeah, so in my folder right here, there's a one-pager that includes our requests as well as relevant information on the state, including how many volunteers from California have served. And we've also included a card in here so that you can reach out at any time.
Perfect. Anything else for today?
Yeah, just one more quick question. Do you see any opportunities or challenges for the growth of the Peace Corps in this Congress?
I can't think of anything specific right now, but I'll be sure to reach out if something comes to mind.
All right. Well, I just want to thank you again so much for your time. And thank you for signing the Dear Colleague letter in support of the Peace Corps in both 2025 and 2026. We really appreciate the Congressman's support on that. There are more than 150 of us here today for our Hill Day, and we would really appreciate your support going forward.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.
Great, amazing. Oscars. Thank you so much, Olivia, Mariam, and Oren. I had to negotiate that to happen, but we really wanted to show you, what a meeting could look like. Of course, you can move things around a little bit, maybe put the asks further up, like Rodney had said, but we really wanted to just give you an idea of what this meeting should be and how you can incorporate a story into the asks. And sort of like the different parts of it. So some things to keep in mind as you're, going into these meetings is to research the office ahead of time. We'll provide some materials for all of you as you're going into the meetings, and we can share that as well if you reach out to you, or reach out to us. But over the next week or so, we'll be sending all of that. So look over all of the documents we're sharing with you so that you can study them, have an idea of what's going on. Also keep in mind that sometimes meeting space is limited and staffers may often ask to host meetings in the hallway or other available spaces. Be respectful of their time and thank them for their willingness to meet. Introductions are a vital part of this meeting. Make sure to introduce yourself and indicate whether you're a constituent of the representative's district. This can be really important for some of these meetings, and I'll make sure to also let you know and the groups know who's the constituent as well. Make sure to recognize some of the accomplishments and support from the representatives, which we will also have in our resources. Make sure your story is concise, and that's something that has come up as I'm talking to advocates who have done this in years past. Sometimes we can go on and on about our stories, and we're passionate. We have a lot of stories to share, but it's really important that we sort of trim that down. And as we're going into these meetings, we're coming prepared. We know what we want to say, and that we're really trying to hammer in what our asks are and why we're there for those meetings. Staffers will love to hear your story, but we really want them to leave with the primary ask from your meeting. You also want to make sure you're clear about how the staffer and members of Congress can help to support the Peace Corps, which is that ask portion. That is extremely important. You need to make sure to also think about asking thoughtful questions about the future of the Peace Corps in Congress. we'll keep, we're going to ask leaders to help keep careful notes of these responses and let us know if there's anything that, we can better support some of these members and some of these staffers. And so that'll be a process that we're going to receive feedback from all of you also going on the Hill or meeting. Some of you are also doing district meetings. So as you're doing those district meetings, how those go. Make sure at the end to thank the member of Congress or staffer for their time and follow up with any information that the staffer may ask. And so, yeah, we just really wanted to, give some of this information to all of you and provide a space where we can sort of get you thinking about how you're going to tell your story and how these meetings might go so that it doesn't seem as scary to some of the people who are doing this for the first time. And even for some people who have done this for years and years and years. So yeah, so thank you for joining us. We wanted to also open this up for Q&A. And if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat box. But we do have a lot of talking points that we're looking at for this year, and that includes some people have said the Congressional Gold Medal, the congressional resolution as well as funding for the Peace Corps. And we're hoping, we're not sure if we're going to get a reauthorization yet from Garamendi, but if we get that in time, that'll be included. And we'll make sure to bring all of those points together and get that all up to you, including the statistics and things you would need to prepare for your meeting. And so definitely keep an eye out for that. So Joe and Oren, I want to pass it to you if you've seen any questions as well in the chat box that we can answer. Rodney, Misty, Joe can answer for all of you as you're preparing for your meetings.
Yeah, thanks, Miriam. And again, thanks for all those, Olivia and Mariam and Oren for a great job on the script. So there are a couple of questions. I'll first of all, one about who's setting up meetings, which you may have a good answer for that, Miriam. And then also maybe as far as the district level too, how can people help and help get those set up as well?
Sure. So I am setting up the bulk of the meetings for everyone. And so we're hoping that we'll give you an itinerary as we get closer to, and also connect you to your teams ahead of time. And so we have a bunch of resources that we're preparing just to help people get an idea of what kind of roles you want to prepare for ahead of time. And how to think through telling your story. And so that's all coming to you very soon. But I am working on scheduling some of those meetings both in the House and the Senate. I've asked some leaders who've done this in the past to support some of that effort. But we're right now working on setting up all of those meetings. So you don't have to worry about that. Just come prepared to go to them. We're hoping that everyone will have at least 4 to 7 meetings to attend. And some people may be helping us to just go around and make sure all of the offices get some of the resources that we have. So yeah, I'm primarily working on that. But yeah, we're hoping to connect all of the groups ahead of time so that you have the chance to connect with each other, email back and forth if you want to meet up, practice ahead of time, especially if you're not coming to the conference and won't see each other in person. This could be a really good opportunity to do so. And so you should keep an eye out for those emails. They're coming out to you very shortly.
Yeah, and then I got a question for Misty that came up. Thanks, Patrick. What advice you would have on the use of public service announcements to supplement the meetings on Capitol Hill? So,
Can you repeat that just one more time?
yeah, so let me spotlight you also so everybody can see you. A question from Patrick came in, was asking what advice you have on the use of public service announcements in addition to meetings on the Hill to raise awareness about what you're trying to do. Yeah.
What do we mean? Like, give an example of a public service announcement.
Well, I mean, I can try to answer that too, but I think whether it's a press release or a video that you want to put out online to kind of complement, the ask that you have on Capitol Hill to raise awareness.
Yeah. I personally, as a one staffer, if I had a volunteer ask me that, I would ask that we potentially stick with what we are providing, or just run it across maybe run it through somebody to make sure that whatever you want to show the member of Congress or point the member of Congress in the direction towards is okay to share. I know that we live in the realm of a lot of mixed signal media. So just really making sure that whatever you're sharing is okay with the Peace Corps. And if it is okay, I think when you are sharing a statistic or you're sharing your story, I think just saying something like, I read this article the other day that I would love the member of Congress to read, and kind of point it out in that way. Or I watched this video, would be interested to see if you would like to watch this video. I'm thinking that is what you asked me if I answered that correctly.
Yeah, I think so. Patrick, if you have any more on that, feel free to put that in. And then I think we actually had questions probably more geared a little bit towards us as far as, well, just to give you some context. We did across the U.S. have proclamations and resolutions made at the state level back in February, March time period. And one of the things that's been circulating is the possibility of a congressional resolution to honor the Peace Corps' 65th anniversary. And thanks, Patrick, for asking this also. I think that this could be probably opened up a little bit. I think that there was some element of asking Misty and Rodney if there was a good approach to something like that, but also it may be something we could respond to as well. But just open it up in case there's some thoughts on that from one side. Oh.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. Joe, just making sure I'm responding to the appropriate question. This is in terms of like doing a resolution.
Yeah, kind of
The
calling
question.
for like a congressional resolution or a joint resolution to support or recognize the Peace Corps' 65-year history, which comes up signing that in September.
Yeah, and you know what? I think my initial sort of brain immediately goes to the Peace Corps caucus as the sort of natural potential champions for something like that. If you all were looking to pursue that, I know Garamendi in previous congresses has led the Peace Corps conference. I actually haven't seen if they have stood that up this Congress. But certainly, Garamendi was a Peace Corps volunteer himself, and I think would be interested in leading something like that if you all were to pursue it. So I think that would probably be a natural place to where I would start that inquiry. The other sort of cautionary note I would just share is the current House majority has sort of brought new rules as to resolutions that you sort of want to make sure that you're not running afoul of, because they won't necessarily advance every single type of resolution. So it would just need to be written specifically, and I'd have to go back to look at those rules to make sure that it doesn't run crosswise of those rules.
That's helpful. I'll just say briefly that we have been talking to a couple of offices about the possibility of this. Garamendi is definitely one of those, noting that we are coming up in a little bit of a challenging time with, like you mentioned earlier, Rodney, about the Congress not moving much forward in general, but then also elections coming up and all that. So there's certainly some challenges there, but we are in discussion and appreciate that feedback. Yeah,
of course.
And really quick, because I forgot, we are doing district meetings. We are supporting district meetings as well. It's something that has it's come about a little bit more organically this year. There's been a lot of people who've been who couldn't come to our Hill Day, but still want to be involved. So if you're interested in pursuing one, you can't make it to DC, but you'd like to be involved somehow, I'm going to put my email in the chat. feel free to email me or to let other people know, that we're supporting some of those meetings, and we can do our best. Hopefully next year we can grow that initiative a bit more. As you know, a lot of people can't always afford to come to DC, or they have to stay more locally for a variety of reasons. And so we really want to make sure that that opportunity exists for people. And so if you're interested in pursuing one, or people that might be interested in pursuing one, please do contact us, as we can help support, provide some language, provide the relevant contacts for you to set up your calls, your meetings, with the right people. So yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Paul's comment. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. Curious, quickly, if Misty and Rodney, if you all have a specific example, maybe that you could share of a recent campaign that you all have been part of, that has seen some success, particularly in this challenging, political climate.
Yeah, there have been few and far between. I will be honest. But actually, the one that comes immediately to mind was our last year's advocacy around reauthorizing the Development Finance Corporation. That has been something that one has been involved with going all the way back to 2018 with the Build Act, and basically fighting for the DFC to get reauthorized. Something we have been working on for, gosh, I mean, before my time, and being able to see that all the way through last year, bipartisan support, nearly tripled resources to developing countries, $180 billion in resourcing that can go towards developing countries that DFC now has. It was a huge success, and it was something that wasn't always guaranteed, given obviously all of the various changes and development assistance that we saw over last year. So being able to be a part of that, and we were talking to the authorizers and providing feedback on legislation, and we had our advocates who came to DC who were also talking to their members of Congress as well about it, and so to see that culminate into its final passage at the end of last year was a really huge win. So I think that's one that I would immediately point to. But there were others. I mean, Misty, please jump in. But I'm even going back to last year when sort of at the very sort of peak of the USAID sort of dissolution, and we were fighting to keep PEPFAR, and we had some sort of early victories there. And I remember when when the president sent the rescissions package that included PEPFAR money, we were able to push back on that. We were involved in fighting to preserve MCC, Millennium Challenge Corporation, which for a second there we were worried was going to become a victim to Doge and their efforts. So I think even in a really challenging time, and I think the sort of the constrained fiscal environment continues, and we're still navigating that. But I think being able to still pull some wins out of that, it's been encouraging. Anyway, Misty, anything I missed?
No, I agree with everything that Rodney said. Last year was a really difficult year for all of us. But we did have some wins out of that, and Rodney gave great explanations. I think some advice that I would give advocates is to never stop. This is a really difficult thing that we have chose to associate ourselves with, right? And it can be challenging and exhausting at times, but just going back to what I talked about, just remembering your why, remembering why you are in the meeting with your member of Congress, and just continuing to get up every morning and starting over, and just understanding that the work that you're doing is so very important, and to never stop. Also give yourself a little self-care. That's extremely important. But yeah, just wanted to end with, I really wish you all the best success on your Hill Day. I know it's going to be great. The members of Congress and their staff are going to love to hear from you. As Rodney said, I really think that you guys are are going at a really opportune time. So good luck to everybody, and we cannot wait to see your success.
Thank you so much, Rodney and Misty. We really appreciate you joining us and sharing a lot of this great information and some of the experiences that you both have had in preparing advocates and also working on the Hill. And to everyone, we're going to be following up with lots of information, talking points, everything that you could possibly ever need and more. And so hopefully by the time Hill Day comes around, you'll be feeling prepared and ready to really go on the Hill and make a difference. We're so excited to have you. We're going to be having over 150 advocates join us, over 150 meetings that we're organizing. So we are currently in the trenches trying to get all of this ready for all of you on the Hill, and we're so excited to have you, like to welcome you to DC. So yeah, please keep staying tuned with your email, with your emails as we send things out. If you have questions, do feel free to reach out. Missy has shared her contact information. She'll be there at our conference, and if you have any questions, feel free to come up to any of us. We're here to support you and make sure that we have a very successful Hill Day this year. So yeah, thank you everyone. We've gone over a little bit, so I want to give you back your evenings and your nights or afternoons or mornings, wherever you are. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you all.
Yeah, and happy 4th.